Hello and welcome to the White Void, the first of a possible series now in this place. Today's topic, land-based empires, and some of their similarities along with differences that make each of them unique. Those three empires are the Tokugawa Shogunate of Japan, the Ottoman Empire, and the Russian Empire. Now, how's about we get to the reading, huh? Let's start with... We'll begin every part simple here, with the structure of their government. The government structure of Japan during the Tokugawa era was heavily militaristic and sort of ethnocentric, a structure which would provide reason for the people to be interested in outside culture more so, ironically. Japan, under the rule of a military leader called shogun, found unity among the people. And in their desperation to keep this unity began to purge a lot of outside influence, such as Christianity as a religion, with only an exception to the Dutch for trade, because the Dutch are cool, I guess. This also included punishments such as tortures, even execution, for violating the unity of the people. Information such as this emphasizes the militaristic structure of Japan's government at the time, as harsh punishments and executions of outside influence was part of the strict, unforgiving, and enclosed rule to those under the authority of the Tokugawa family during this era. Yeah, being all enclosed may not have been the best idea to keeping the people in check, especially when the old government, the many daimyo of the state, were actually still around. Let's get into that. The Tokugawa era of Japan's empire is one that had more inner than outer conflict in it, a trend which we will see among all the other empires actually, leading to a situation in which political unrest was truly allowed to thrive within the state. Originally, Japan was split into multiple rival territories called the daimyo, where there was no unified structure really. The Tokugawa family united the country into one Japan, but not completely. Daimyo were still in rule all over small territories, but only the shogunate truly had full control over the full country. Because of this general unity, there was also a consequence of ethnocentrism rising, causing more trade and connections to Europe and other major trading partners to be severed. Despite their attempts at unity, rival states and different cultures and currencies still prospered in every territory, not to mention the riots later caused by the Tokugawa rule being revolted against. Like, seriously, that class structure sucked, man. This is all to say that Japan had more conflict inside itself than outside with others, and that it was only after Japan truly opened to the extremely negative connections with other countries could it actually have war. Wow. I don't really think that's a good thing, but status structure, while more cultural, can have its political affairs. And of course, it's a no-brainer that people such as the samurai would rather make the same income from being a merchant instead of risking their lives on the battlefield just to be riding out there or something, I don't know. But of course, we're not done yet, for how this empire came to be is pretty interesting. The Tokugawa shogunate may not have even happened if it weren't for one significant man, Tokugawa Ieyasu, who can be used to give insight on how the structure itself was great in concept actually, but not execution. Ieyasu began to be fed up with the current government, as the emperor didn't really do much, and the daimyo were separate military leaders who controlled their own state within Japan, as I said earlier. Establishing the shogunate as an overall leader, he went on to attempt to control all of the daimyo, which worked sort of. As I said, they were still kind of split, and unfortunately the daimyo still had a lot of separate rulings from the central government. Additionally, Ieyasu's class system wasn't the most popular the longer it lasted. Eventually, it fell apart due to the unrest, and the shogunate only lasted just over 200 years, which is actually kind of short for an empire. Not from him, the shogunate wouldn't exist, but that brings the question, would it have been better? That's for you to decide, but fortunately, or unfortunately, depending how you look at it, this all changed when the Americas showed up and just outright demanded that they stop doing this.
Open the country. Stop having it be closed.
Anyway, let's get to the summary. Overall, the Tokugawa shogunate experienced a heavy amount of ethnocentric ideals within, and an oppressive government, only to end with revolt, of course, giving the important lesson of how the people need access to the outside world to be truly happy. Due to the structure of status, peasants found themselves right under samurai warriors, but they didn't have nearly the same wealth or power despite this. Additionally, people in the lowest status, merchants, found themselves with much more wealth despite the status. But what was truly the tipping point was the almost complete block of outside trade, making products of higher quality from outside inaccessible to the masses. Had there been more thought put into it, the Tokugawa structure of shogunate would not have been much of a failure. However, due to the flop in success, it's important to note how the unnatural structure of status and blocking of vital trade can collapse a government completely. So I guess lessons learned. Don't enclose your state from the outside. Now, let's see what the Ottomans were doing during this time. Already, things are much different here in the Middle East. A South Asian paradise of an empire, the Ottomans. Once again, starting with the government structure, the Ottoman Empire structure of government was heavily influenced by Islamic rule. Despite being overall tolerant of religion, a detail uncovering the reason as to how the empire could last as long as it did. During this time, and later, Christianity was in full gear on a spread back outward from Europe. But the Ottomans began to slow with their conquest of Holy Lands like Jerusalem and Mecca. With the seizure of Constantinople, it was really the turning point when Islam grew yet again. This is yet to say that Islam's incorporation shaped the way that government was formed, shaping their conquest to have full control over all lands sacred to the religion, as well as other rival religions such as Christianity or Judaism. Yet even then, Christians still found themselves very free under Ottoman rule, showing just how their tolerance of religion was large in juxtaposition towards their conquest's path. A more peaceful approach to a conquest is very uniquely an Ottoman thing. It was kind of jarring to move on from the mess of the Tokugawa shogunate, but how about we discuss the wars and conflict? The Ottoman Empire's relationship with conflict in general was actually rather tame during this era, leading to a very quick and expansive growth, giving the Ottoman Empire its unique image of everlasting because it had a long existence in history. The Abbasid Caliphate's conquest nature had been carried over to the new Ottoman Empire, sparking expansion. However, of course, expanding into new territories now dominated by Christianity was going to be a difficult task. At least, that's what was thought. Though some resistance occurred, for most part, Christians enjoyed a rather free rule under the Ottomans, not even being required to be practicing Islam to enjoy the rights of many people. Due to this, the already wide range of areas under Islam's faith, the Ottoman Empire saw massive expansion without much of a resistance at all. This in turn is what the empire's whole relationship with conflict and war was during most of its time. Tame and peaceful, yet overseeing growth. So, turns out expansion isn't all death and destruction with the right mindset. But of course, this only occurred to the input of one very important man in the empire that changed it forever. It's time to talk about a significant leader. The Ottoman Empire experienced a reform due to one man, Suleiman, now kind of referred to as Suleiman the Great, giving hope to the idea that the aggressive expansion of the empire didn't have to be shrouded in war. Before Suleiman's rule as Sultan and Caliph, the Ottoman Empire experienced an area of division, having to be reunited amongst many disagreements. But Suleiman sought to change things, as he still held on to the ideological thought of a larger empire, but never once sought to do it with a sword in hand. Instead, Suleiman provided education and religious tolerance among the people, allowing those in the areas that they conquered to live as they wished. Because of this, Suleiman deserved to be truly recognized for all of his efforts to continue the empire in a more peaceful, non-violent way. The land could grow, and the death count could continue to fall. Suleiman truly was a great inspiration. I'm willing to bet he wasn't perfect, but his positives are still very noteworthy. Let's get to the summary. Overall, the Ottoman Empire's way of expansion proved major success in keeping the people happy, and the territory large, which could be projected as an example to future generations of how expansion of rule is properly done. Of course, one way to gain power is to have religious upper hand in your system, which the Ottomans excelled in. By ruling holy territory and having Islam caliphs within their ranks, the Ottomans had the power in areas of religious and governing. Additionally, conflict was minimal after Suleiman showed up, offering peace, education, and most surprisingly, religious tolerance despite the heavily Islamic government. With all these traits combined, the reason why Ottoman rule was able to thrive for so long is made very clear. And, if leaders are to listen to it, many governments could last the same in this day and age. Great. So, lessons learned here yet again. Do not expand with bloodlust. You're not the Mongols, after all. Alright, let's steer in a new direction. How about we discuss a new empire, that being... That joke isn't original in the slightest. As always, let's start with how this empire was basically structured. The Russian Empire's basic government structure was based on the idea of complete and total control under one major rule, a structure that would lead to Russia's people being in a bit of an unrest, not as much as Japan's. The Tsars, who were the equivalent of the emperors in the Russian Empire, were against the idea of lords in the feudal system who owned land. Although it was proven to work for most, the empire found itself to be known for the overbearing rule of the Tsar, taking Ivan the Terrible's treatment as lords, executing lords to an extreme if they did not meet his ideal absolutist rule. It's all to say that the structure of government in the Russian Empire was based on the rule of one single, extremely powerful and influential ruler. This would give whoever is in said position complete and total control, which may or may not have been a good thing in the eyes of the people, but we can't really tell. Oh, absolutism. My
Not.
favorite. This can definitely only end well for them, and as we know, it actually kind of did. But Enough of that, let's once again talk conflict. During this era, the Russian Empire found itself in conflict much of the time with other opposing forces as opposed to itself, like much of the others, even though you could technically still say it was itself, because it was with other nomadic tribes in their area. As the Empire formed a militaristic, more advanced state than other areas around Siberia, the Empire found itself always fighting with the pastoral peoples of the area around them for the most part. Though the state was growing and had more rivalries than other powers, Russia found itself constantly dealing with the nomads who lived there for centuries, not wanting their land under Russian Empire rule. Because of this, one could see how Russia always ended up in conflict during its early days, and they would continue to be under constant pressure, being known as a country that was built for war. Ah yes, expansion in a territory where natives already live, and, well, nothing more than their probably sacred land. You know, where have I seen this before? Whatever, that's not our topic. Instead, let's talk about Russia's significant leaders/accomplishments. We're doing a leader again. Ivan IV, or Ivan the Terrible, was a Tsar of Russia's empire history that deserves to be documented, as I've mentioned before, showing how the government structure of Russia was flawed and who could be leader at the time. Dissatisfied with his position in Moscow, Ivan soon found himself seeking and eventually achieving the role as Tsar for all of Russia. However, due to the possible documented mental health issues, Ivan was known to have an erratic, somewhat unreasonable rule. He kind of had a hatred for the feudal system that dominated most of Europe during this time, which caused him to track down boyars, or lords, and exile or possibly execute them if they didn't listen. Due to this, Ivan IV should be remembered for his significant influence on Russia's image of absolutism and the anti-feudal reign he had. Like, seriously, man, calm down. Europe, non-feudal, impossible. And quite possibly the worst choice at the time, just to earn yourself the nickname Ivan the Terrible. How flattering. But regardless, let's just sum it up. The Russian Empire's rule could be viewed in many ways as somewhat of a disappointment, actually, but by taking a look at what was made the Empire feel lesser than it could have, it could be taken as proper criticism towards types of governing. Location is a rather major aspect of government, and Russia was always in somewhat of a poor position. Siberia was home to many nomadic peoples, and the constant conflict with them was a setback in expansion that could have occurred. Eventually, though, they did overcome those tribes, but now a new problem lied, of course, in the government itself. Tsars such as Ivan IV can be seen as a complete lack of monitoring who was in leadership, oppressing the feudal system and becoming more absolutist in the process. What can be learned from everything is that absolute control can collapse a government, and though it wasn't fatal, it very well could have attempted to be repeated. So, lessons learned. Being an absolute jerk to those
Not so.
innocent boyars and lords, oh the humanity! Either way, it's still messed up, but at least he somewhat had a point in raising the common up to be more important. Well, with that I believe we have found ourselves at the end. Every empire has shown off its own unique characteristics, but I believe it's necessary to review what makes them similar. All empires experienced a turbulent, conflicted start. Some gained a reputation for it, while others were able to renew themselves in the end. Each empire saw a significant face among their ranks who was able to make or break the basic structure of their government. All of them had a major religious rule that was what you could mostly find in their leaders or ranks, and what differed each being religion or philosophy it was. Finally, each empire provides an understanding to anyone who chooses to research them as to what makes a government last, taking into account ones like Tokugawa, which was destined to fail, or the Ottomans, which had the perfect formula to thrive. Oh, there they are, the credits, and the full bibliography. How wonderfully it takes up the entire screen. But seriously, I hope this has been fun. This was a new way of setting up a school project for me, and I enjoyed it. Anyway, it's time for me, an in-person self, to take over, and maybe I'll appear this way again, probably in a different Laz's project. But for now, goodbye, maybe we'll meet again.